When we do a fair market rent letter, we have an appraiser go out to the property. They'll take a look at where it is in the city, what other rents are like in that area, and they'll provide, an appraised amount.
It's really important to realize that an appraiser is an opinion of value of a person. So, obviously you don't want to pay for more than one appraisal, but that appraisal or that value is derived from a single person's idea of what that thing is worth.
Let's talk about next determining property value when it comes to residential and commercial properties. What's the difference? What do I need to be aware of?
Sure.
Yeah, so let's just start with residential. The first thing that we're probably going to ask for is if there's an MLS. If there's a listing, we can use the information of the listing to use a purchase price, and then from there, we'll ask for a purchase and sale agreement to get that final agreed upon cost. In terms of the actual appraisal, depending on if it's insured, if it's an insured deal, the underwriter on the insurance side is going to do an appraisal regardless to make sure that value comes in where it needs to be. So there is going to be some guarantee on that end from the insurance company. In terms of fair market rent values and leases in place, if you are purchasing a rental, which a lot of you guys are on the investing side, you guys have probably either heard of obviously a lease or fair market rent values. If there is a lease in place, we're actually able to use that contractual lease amount, which often provides to be a little bit more beneficial than using the fair market rent. When we do a fair market rent letter, we have an appraiser go out to the property. They'll take a look at where it is in the city, what other rents are like in that area, and they'll provide, an appraised amount. There are times where that appraised amount comes in either significantly or a little bit lower than what the actual lease amount is going to be. So sometimes that can have an effect on qualifying if it's one of those circumstances where you're using that rent to help qualify. Using the fair market rent can sometimes hurt, but it's not always your fault that there isn't leases in place, obviously. So that is one thing to take in consideration.
And something to also take into consideration is even though you have say you're buying a rental property and that rental property has a pre-existing lease in place, if those leases are maybe higher than what the normal area is, the insurer has the right to be able to order an appraisal and get fair market rent for that, and then use the lower of the two. So when you're qualifying, if you're hitting just the top of your qualification based off of really, really high rents, there is a possibility that CMHC will request an appraisal on their own dime. They'll pay for it, but if it comes in less, then you might have to come up with more of a down payment to close on that transaction. And deriving value from commercial real estate, so it's a little bit different than residential real estate. So they derive their value from the net operating income of the property. So we had a little conversation earlier about anchor tenants. So that has a lot to do with how you derive value. So it's based off of cap rate. The lower the cap rate, the higher the value of the property. And so if you have anchor tenants and you have really great tenants, obviously the cap rate is lower and the value is higher. There are a handful of different variables involved with doing a commercial appraisal. But that's basically in a nutshell how they come up with the value. They look at the operating income and then they take into consideration vacancy rate and a few other different variables as well to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's important to note too that that cap rate isn't going to be standard. You may have a building in Toronto and then that exact same particular type building maybe in Sarnia. That cap rate is going to be much different in Toronto versus Sarnia. So it's something that changes per area, and then a lot of the lending regulations will change based on the area. Lenders like to see a more densely populated and larger city center, and that's going to play to more strength on the evaluation of the property as well too. So,
and it's really important to realize that an appraiser is an opinion of value of a person. So obviously you don't want to pay for more than one appraisal, but that appraisal or that value is derived from a single person's idea of what that thing is worth. So, I have many stories of people not being happy with appraisals and not being able to work it out with the appraiser and going to get a new appraisal. Obviously not something we enjoy doing or like doing or common practice, but it is somebody's opinion of the value of your property.
Yeah, it's a very subjective measure, right?